pictures on the wall, got your posters on the wall, got your problems on the wall. All your problems, all your problems, all your feelings. We're supposed to care somehow. Oh, you got your pictures on the wall, got your posters on the wall, got your problems on the wall. Yeah, all your problems, all your problems. We're all working harder, waiting for a good chance to get a little distance farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Say anything to get me out of here. Working harder, waiting for a good chance to get a little distance farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Say anything to get me out of here.
Hey everyone, Greg Staley here from Diverge Media. We are live, and on the other side we have...
Brother Drizzer. I might be having connection issues again. Oh, nice mug.
I don't know who got it to me, but or for me.
Shameful.
Fruity and Sips.
I bought it and I thought it said Fruity and Slips.
When you say one thing, but you mean your mother. So, yeah, there's that. All right, so tonight we're going to talk the Swedish COVID model. We have some more data. If you've seen our article today, it's a good one. We translated a bunch of stuff from the Swedish health page on COVID from Swedish into English. I kind of provided a background on what's going on there. If you listen to the media here, have you believe that nothing was beaten and it's absolute pandemonium. But from what we'll show you tonight, it's anything but. And in addition to that, we're going to revisit the Milgram experiments, the Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiment, and ask the question again, why people just follow orders, why people will go and do something they know is harmful to others, even when they're presented with the evidence and they know better. So we'll get right into that. I'm going to go right into the Milgram experiment video. We talked about the actual experiment last time, and this time around I just want to show what the actual experiment looked like. So I'm going to go about there. All right.
This movement. Those aren't too tight.
No, that's okay.
No. The teacher will read out some word pairs to you. Blue girl.
The learner is told he's going to be asked a series of memory questions by the teacher. He will have to word pairs and then correctly remember them when offered multiple choices.
If the answer is incorrect, you will receive an electric shock.
The teacher is then taken next door and shown the generator, which ranges from 15 volts all the way up to a lethal 450 volts. The domestic electricity supply in the UK is, of course, 240 volts.
So as you can see there, they have it all labeled, and it says, you know, extreme shock, danger, and then you get to the end, and the very last one says XXX. And so the Milgram experiment found that 65% of people would go all the way to the finish line. And this is a more in-depth look. You can look at our other live stream of why people just follow orders, where we talk about the experiments, the results, things like that. But this is a behind-the-scenes look of what they actually did, and I think it's a great thing to be able to actually understand and illustrate and show what people were going through, and then apply that concept to COVID, because human behavior is the same regardless of the circumstances. Same but different, as they say in Muay Thai.
Our teachers are given the list of questions and told to increase the voltage each time the learner gets a question wrong. They are then given an example of a low voltage shock.
And try and estimate in volts the amount of shock you feel you're getting.
Okay. Oh, shit.
Do you know how much that was?
Enough.
75.
It was actually 45. Just,
Oh my god.
teacher begin.
Shoe horn. Steam.
The point of this test is to see whether the teachers, our subjects, will call a stop to the experiment or continue to the point where they are administering seemingly lethal electric shocks to the victims simply because the scientist is telling them to.
That's correct. The next word is bicycle. The options tyre, race, helmet, shorts. That's incorrect, so there'll be 120 volts. I don't think I want to do this anymore.
If you could continue, please, teacher.
There is. No, I don't think I'm going to do it anymore.
The experiment requires you to continue.
Yeah, even so, I don't think I'm going to do it anymore.
So these are the prompts we talked about in our other video.
Correct. Captain.
According to plan, our accomplice provided many wrong answers. Each protest was coordinated to a particular shock voltage on the generator, and his responses were played via a CD.
That's wrong. 150 volts. The correct answer is Captain Shoe. Cup. That's wrong. 225 volts.
Take it off! I've had enough of this!
Why do people just follow orders, right? Milgram experiment.
He's in a lot of pain,
So he knows it's wrong.
but he's not comfortable.
We must continue to the end of the experiment.
Those are your
Whether
prompts.
he likes it or not, he has to go on until he's learnt the words correctly.
Okay. Forest. That's wrong. 240 volts. Are you sure this is not causing any lasting damage? He sounds like he's in a lot of pain.
Well, the shocks might be painful, they're not harmful.
What does that mean, though? They're not harmful. Sorry, I'm not getting you. When you say that they might be painful but not harmful,
They cause no long-term damage.
okay, so what does that mean? It doesn't leave any scars.
It causes no damage.
That seems very cold and calculated to me. This doesn't seem like a very... Anyway. Golden. That's wrong, mate. 300 volts.
That's enough! I refuse to answer anymore! Just let me out!
Staple. The options are diet, jar, balcony, and bowl.
It's messed up, eh?
Who am I going to answer?
If the learner doesn't answer in a reasonable time, say 4 to 5 seconds, then you have to treat the answer as wrong and follow that procedure.
Did you hear that, learner? Just any response, mate. Come on. Wild guess.
Please continue.
345 volts if you're still with me. I'm sorry. I can't do this, honestly. Can we stop this experiment? Because I can't do this.
If you don't continue, we'll have to discontinue the experiment.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. I'm not going to do this.
Incorrect. 405 volts.
Jeez. No response.
Sorry, I don't know. Does someone want to check on him or something? It's just he's not making any noise now, and he was before. And I'm quite happy to go on, but I just a bit worried about.
If you would continue.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried.
Did we
'cause
lose
he
the
was-
stream? Is the stream unavailable?
Like, he was like complaining before about the,
But no harm will come to
but
him.
he's not making any noise now.
It's essential that we
It's
continue.
not about
with this.
regulations. All right, we'll stop there. I don't know if we got flagged. For policy violation?
What?
What is it saying? Stream unavailable. Streams.
Suspended for policy violations.
We got suspended?
Yeah,
So are we even live right now? Or what's happening?
I guess not.
Okay.
No, there's people in the comments.
Well, there's people in the comments, but I'm up on live.
YouTube sucks.
Yeah, it says stream unavailable. I don't know if it didn't like us showing that.
Maybe
Like,
maybe it went down on the Facebook.
no.
It may just be the whole COVID thing. I mean, not.
Are we gone? Like, what's going on? I can't see anything on my end.
I think we're on Facebook.
Are we on Facebook? Yeah, we're gone on YouTube, eh? Unbelievable.
We're still getting YouTube comments though.
Well, wow, I was watching then got censored. Yep, yeah.
We are.
Stream suspended for policy violations. I have no idea why. If I had to guess, like, it's not our video.
So they can't hear us, or they can.
Well, no, YouTube's completely down. So if you're on YouTube, can you put out a message to go to Facebook? I guess for now.
Facebook just blocked. What?
Yeah,
Are you kidding?
Is Facebook down to? No, now we're back. I don't even know if I can show the Stanford prison experiment one. Like, why is that a violation? Is it going to even tell me why? Like, can I even show the other one? Like, I
think we're back, guys.
Oh, we are back. Can I even show the other thing without it going down?
I don't know.
That is the weirdest violation for what? Okay, it's not ours.
Who's Darren Brown? Is he the owner of that video?
I don't know.
Because Facebook was telling me that Darren Brown has taken action on your video from the page Diverge Media because it may contain music, audio, or a video that belongs to them.
Buddy, I'm showing your video. You want credit. There you are. Like, if this is your channel, then Darren Brown reproduces the I don't know. That is messed up. Sorry, everyone. I legitimately don't know. Okay, all I can say is, can I even show this one? Like, well, I'm going to try. Hopefully we don't lose anyone. Well, that was okay. We'll talk about that real quick. We'll give it some time before we jump back in. That video was okay to show on YouTube before. Yeah, exactly. So I have no idea why I decided to call that a stream violation, but I call foul play. So Milgram experiment, we were talking about that in relation with how far people will go. Yeah, they probably are having with us. So yeah. Oh, hey, no, this is a great chance to plug it. So on our Facebook page, okay, if you can find the plug on our Facebook page and put it in there, go to DLive, okay? Make an account, sign up with us there. We need alternative platforms, and we've been saying this for a long time. We're just waiting for the hammer to drop on being censored, and it's like, I guess stuff like this is kind of like, okay, that's kind of weird. But anyways, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube right now. We need 200 subs to go live on DLive. I guess I'm going to be looking at, I think YouTube has a live stream platform. What?
Facebook too.
It was blocked on Facebook?
Yeah, I can submit a dispute for it right now if you want. I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, I would put a dispute in, but I'm not sure. Again, like,
it says your video matches 5 minutes and 19 seconds of content owned by Darren Brown. Play matching part.
So I can't show that much of it?
I guess.
Like, I don't. If somebody wanted to show my video, I'm not gonna flag it for copyright violations, so long as they show that it's from my channel. Like, yeah. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. Let's go back into it. Okay, we'll play about a minute, then we'll stop, and then we'll go forward. See if we can get around the Stanford prison experiment. Here we go.
We'll take it off the screen every couple minutes. I don't have your screen share.
What was that?
I don't have your screen share.
I don't have my screen share up.
Giggling.
Yeah, it was the video. So you can't submit a dispute if it's not your property. Like, you can put in another reason why you have permission to use it, but
Okay.
yeah.
Myself that
So basically, this guy goes in. He decides, you know, they got to get these prisoners on side to listen to him. He decides he's going to be the most strict. And then you see some of the stuff they did here. First night they had a prison riot. Or not riot, but they barred themselves in their room.
There was the first evening a kind of rebellion that took place.
The prisoners rebelled. They barricaded themselves in their cells and said, we refuse to come out. They took off their numbers. They didn't want to be de-individuated. They started cursing the guards to their face. And the key turning point was the guards began to think of them as dangerous prisoners.
Okay, so they started thinking of them as dangerous prisoners.
And then the next key thing happened.
These are all volunteers.
Prisoner 8612, he was the first one to have an emotional breakdown.
I feel really fucked up inside. You don't know. I gotta go. To a doctor, anything. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside. Don't you know? I'm fucked up. I don't know how to explain it. I'm all fucked up inside. Now! Now!
at the time, if you had questioned me about the effect I was having, I would say.
So this is the guy that was. I'm gonna keep pausing here. Sorry, everyone, but I don't want to get flagged again. So this is the guy that determined he was going to be the most, rough and tumble guard and treat people the worst, essentially, to try to keep them in line. Voluntary experiment. You can look it up. We did a live stream on it called "Why People Just Follow Orders." You can check that one out for more information. But let's see what he has to say.
Well, they must be a wimp. They're weak, or they're faking. Because I wouldn't have believed that what I was doing could actually cause somebody to have a nervous breakdown. It was just us sort of getting our jollies with it. Let's be like puppeteers here. Let's make these people do things.
The guards now began to escalate their use of power. Some of them had prisoners clean out toilet bowls with their bare hands. They now taunt, humiliate, degrade the prisoners in front of each other, and they exert arbitrary control over the prisoners.
And one of the physical punishments you can see that they made them do was the push-ups and things like this. And so this was a volunteer experiment where I believe they were getting paid in this one. That might have been the Milgram. Were they getting paid in this one? I can't remember. It's on our last live stream. But anyways, it was a volunteer experiment. They dressed the guards in khakis, and the prisoners were all there voluntarily. And basically, it got so out of hand that it took this woman here, as you can see, the bottom right, took this woman, 1 out of 50 people that visited the prison, to actually speak up and say, this is wrong, this has gone too far, stop. So we'll just leave it there. I don't want to get it taken down for something stupid, like really. Anyways, but the Stanford Prison Experiment Cult Education Institute, you can check it out there. Got a 13-minute clip that describes pretty well what happened there. Find a different one other than Darren Brown. Just kidding. You have flag us for copyright. Find somebody else who did that. No, I'm just kidding. But Milgram Experiment, Darren Brown, and you can look at that one there.
I think there's an algorithm to it, or maybe it's because you showed it in the last one. Like I don't think the guy actually came on, but
No. I didn't show anything in the last one. So it is definitely algorithm. Like from the algorithm, if you show something too long, it must flag it. But I mean, what is that? It's got to be to prevent watch parties and stuff like that, so that too many people don't watch something from somebody with a platform. Because otherwise, like if you had 1 million people and you're like, hey, here's this really messed up video you should watch, I think this is probably one of those ways that they're keeping people from checking out sources of information and amplifying messages from smaller platforms, etc.
Well, it could be if you have 1 million subscribers, people who actually own the video would want the views, right?
They have 700 subscribers. They have less subs than us, but they have a video that had 1.6 million views. So it's just kind of weird. All right. Do you want to, before we go into the Swedish model, do you want to run through what you're working on for everyone on the BC fisheries?
Sure. Before that, do you want to delete video or do you want to just accept it? Because I don't know what the difference would be. So you can delete the whole live stream.
No, just accept it, because otherwise we're going to lose the whole video. It's like maybe 20, 30 seconds it was up. Sorry, everyone. This is like offset the sound a few seconds. Yeah, there's little things you can do, I'm sure. You're going to have to get more tech savvy. Apparently, I don't know.
Well, what you can do is download it and then change the pitch of the volume, maybe.
I'll pause and comment. It's got to be, I'm going to look it up after this live stream. It's got to be like 2-3 minutes max you can probably play without getting flagged. So just keeping that in mind and then pausing, commenting, getting off that screen, things like that. Little things that never had to happen to us, so we're learning. But yeah, you got that BC fishery story that you're working on. Trudeau has decided to shut down the BC fisheries, and you've reached out to a bunch of people there. And I'll just let you go from there.
Yeah. Reaching out to more tomorrow. I'm actually going to call what's it called? I forget what it's called. It's basically the Salmon Farmers Association for British Columbia. Essentially, they were going to shut them down. They're going to phase them out by 2025, but they decided that they were going to go ahead with it earlier. And the same minister, so she's the DOF, so the Department of Oceans and Fisheries, I think it is. Oh my God, I'm not good at remembering terms. Where is it?
Doesn't matter.
Anyways, her name is why am I losing this? Burnett Jordan. She years ago, actually I have a little clip here. Years ago, she was saying that I'll just summarize it because I want to leave that for the article. But she was saying years ago that she was against, she was against closing down fisheries and people losing their jobs, and now, just years later, she's changed her mind. And I've read a bunch of different articles on this, and it comes down to the UNDRIP or UNDRIP agreement.
UNDRIP
or UNDRIP, yeah, either thing. But what I've researched and found out about this is that if they close down all of the salmon, so there's 19 fisheries in the Discovery Islands, part of British Columbia. That's where they're shutting them down first, and it's due to a land claim from First Nations peoples there.
Is it actually First Nations peoples or some group that claims to be First Nations, like the railroad blockades?
Well, that's what I was wondering, if it was groups from outside, because that's what Kian from Rebel has done, researching a few times. But I don't know. I think you'd probably have to go there to find out and talk to the people. But what I did find out was that if they do shut them all down and they move them, so that they're talking about transitioning them into other alternatives or versions of it. Other alternatives could be landlocked tanks, which would cost, they would be less cost effective, which would cost the consumer more money. I think I'll leave it with one more fact. We'll do two more. So Pamela Anderson is a vegan. She's a celebrity and a vegan activist. She's been opposing these.
I thought he was going to say something else. Sorry. I thought you were about to say something bad.
Okay. She opposes. She was at a conference years ago in 2016 where she opposed the fisheries. She wanted them shut down, and it's taken till about now for them to actually end up shutting them down. It'd be a couple more years by June 2022. And her and David Suzuki showed up at the last minute to this conference. Is that what you want me to say?
No, I'm just David Suzuki's always involved somehow. So.
Yeah, and that was seen in an old Rebel video of theirs from Christopher Wilson. And the last thing I will say, what was it that I forgot? I'll just leave it at that. I'm giving out too much anyways.
All right, so that's going to be on the BC salmon fisheries. I hope you can find the number of jobs that are going to be lost. The reason why it's a concern if they're going to shut down the salmon fisheries out there is that it doesn't mean they're not. That supply is still got to be met. That demand still needs to be met, and it just means that it's going to be imported or done through ways that are less cost efficient. So it's going to fall on the consumer again. And as at a time, meat packing on the hit list too. Anything meat, yeah. Like we were watching. COVID has shut down cargo meat plant numerous times now. And every time this happens, that delays the supply chain, and then you're putting at risk. Farmers are potentially having to now. So like we worked on a farm, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, on a pig farm, we know that they're supposed to go in and out at a certain time. Anything beyond that costs the farm money because now they're feeding them more. And so if you're saying you got to shut down cargo as an example, and you can't get your meat out to the slaughterhouses to be able to get it packed and out of your farm, now you're absorbing that cost. And so what happened in the States earlier on in the pandemic is that there was nowhere for them to send their food. They couldn't afford to keep feeding them. And so you just had massive slaughters of animals simply because there's just nowhere to bring them, and farmers couldn't continue bearing the loss. Like the longer you have pigs, the more they eat and the more expensive they get to feed. And that's just one example in the supply chain. So, excuse me. This is how they will use the native people to take away personal land. Well, the UNDRIP agreement allows anybody who makes a land claim to basically have, even if you sold off and you had something with a contract and somebody you've signed the dotted line, the money's been passed, it doesn't matter. All it takes is one person who says they're native. I don't know what goes into proving that, but if they make that claim against it, now they have to put that on hold and it's up for dispute again. That's what the UNDRIP agreement does.
Does that have to be like traditional lands of the natives, or like?
Well, they'll say
all lands are. But,
that's where it falls in. That's where you get into strange territory. So technically, they'll say, it's whatever their native lands were, but all of it was native lands. So therefore, they might have a claim to anywhere, and that could include this is where it gets nasty. It might be more than just businesses and things like that. It could be very well be your house is on an indigenous land. And I've asked for the record, Bernard, about indigenous or native. I did a story way back when with someone, and she said it doesn't matter. It's just it needs to come from a place of respect. Is basically it. So it's really up in the air as far as what UNDRIP does. And that's part of the problem is it's not clear. And so if somebody has a claim to a land, it's unclear to me as who can make that claim, and it's unclear to me where the limits of that lie. And that's the issue with UNDRIP in a nutshell, is even if a contract's been signed on the dotted line, money's been exchanged, somebody can come in at the last minute and make a claim on that land and put everything on hold. So UN has recognized them as a special group. Yeah, I haven't looked enough into the UNDRIP agreement. That's maybe something I should look into more, because it's definitely something that's going to be used in the future for sure, probably. So we're going to go into. Sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I want to say on that was that already with those 19 fisheries in the Discovery Islands area, 9 of them are already empty for some reason. So there could be many reasons, but some of them that I was researching are they're owned by Cargill. So I don't know what that might have to do with it, but maybe that is.
And this is one of the issues too on a different same problem, different conversation, kind of. But putting too much power in the hands of a few slaughterhouses or a few processing plants is also problematic, because then if it's like creating a monopoly in the market, and then so they're competing right now and it keeps costs low. But if they had the entire market, or the more market they have, the more they can charge, and then that all gets passed on to the consumer. And so here we are. It's just it really needs a free market is crucial to a lot of things. And the reason being, if you have a truly free market and you have lots of competition, it drives the best competitors up and drives costs down overall. So, all right, we're going to go into the Swedish model now. This is our article from today. What's life really like in no lockdown Sweden? We'll skip right through. School precautions in Sweden. So this was taken from the Telegraph YouTube video, where it was a father giving his account of what's like. He's from the UK, but he's living in Sweden during the pandemic. So he had said, we have a lot of time, or he, at the beginning of the video, had this to say about the routine since COVID began. We have a lot of time. This was the teacher, the school teacher, or an employee of the school. It's unclear to me. But she said, we have a lot of time taken away from our classes and our lessons because they have to wash their hands before everything. And it takes about 15 minutes every day. We keep distance. We do all of our physical education lessons outside, no inside. We have longer queues for food. I think it's good for the kids because the kids aren't, from what I know, the biggest source of infection and spread of the disease. So I think it's good. The father said, and what about the staff? Do you feel you're in a danger zone? She replied, I don't feel it. Some do, but they stay home. We had a lot of kids stay home for a long time in the beginning, but now everyone's back. And then he went on to say, we haven't had to stay home and juggle childcare with work life, which the benefits of that are almost incalculable, I think. It's something that doesn't get reflected in the statistics. How much people have been able to carry on with work, social, and normal lives in Sweden in a way which just hasn't been possible almost anywhere else in Europe, or, almost anywhere else in the world. I felt quite fortunate to have been here during the pandemic. Now he goes on to say at the end of that video, for full disclosure, he's not sure that it would work elsewhere, but that's also probably because there's political pressure, things like that. And then we continue. We translated a bunch of the FAQ from Swedish. So stay in a small circle, things like that. If you're going into risk groups with the elderly, just they're at risk of becoming seriously ill. Be careful, basically. Limit the number of contacts, limit the number of close exposures. And it was all recommendations from what I could see. Now they said that at any time they can change the recommendations or the guidelines based on what's going on, but we go through all that. And then FAQs on vaccination. It's going to be voluntary in Sweden, completely voluntary. Who should get tested? They recommend adults and school-age children with symptoms of COVID take a PCR test or to find out. But it's a recommendation again. They also recommend testing to take place in cases of contact tracing. The test can be taken even if you don't have any symptoms of COVID-19. In a situation where the number of suspected cases exceeds the capacity of healthcare services for testing, the regions can decide on temporary adjustments to the regulations for testing. So they talked about this, and I'm going to pop this up here. Not that one. This is where it's from. Public Health Agency of Sweden. It's linked there in the article. But you can see this is where I pulled it from. All the different. Just want to show you that. And then we'll pop back to my article where it's all centralized. So they said in this, globally, it's estimated that 0.5 to 1% of those who are infected with COVID-19 die. There's a clear relationship between increased fatality risk and older age. The older you are, the higher the risk. There are only a few peer-reviewed studies of the infection fatality rate of COVID-19, i.e. the share of infected who die, which means that this might change as new knowledge becomes available. The Public Health Agency of Sweden estimates the fatality rate in the Stockholm region at 0.6% for all ages. The fatality rate among those 70 years or older is 4.3%, whereas It is 0.1% among those younger than 70. So essentially, this is a older generation problem. Now, what we've been made to believe here in Canada, we'll go back, is that it's selfish to say, well, we should get the younger people back to work and get back on with life. And by somehow locking down everyone, we're somehow protecting the above 70 category. So I'll throw out an alternative solution here. In Canada, roughly 80% of our deaths have come from long-term care homes. So I'm not sure how lockdown is preventing the infection rates in the long-term care and retirement homes, where they're already being restricted from seeing visitors and things like this. And it's already very, if you go in, you need to prove you don't have symptoms, etc. So I'm not sure how a lockdown protects that. And that's one thing that's never been clear to me. But on the protect the elderly, protect the immune compromised, protect the vulnerable, there's things we could do that don't restrict any way, shape, or form freedoms or liberties of the Canadian people. Things like, why not offer a at-risk shopping hour, a couple shopping hours for people that are just immune compromised, just at risk from this, and offer it to them and then have it sanitized. There's things like this we could actually do to try to offer alternatives rather than lock down. And now what scares me, and I'll pull up here in a little bit, is they're talking about, like I showed you at Walmart, like we seen the video we posted in Quebec, and they've completely sectioned off entire sections of the Walmart and said, no, you can't get any of these things. They're not essential items. So stop there. How do you determine what is essential for someone else?
Yeah.
Right? So we were talking about this, me and my wife, and it's like, what if my pots and pans, literally I couldn't cook on them anymore, and the Teflon was coming off every time I cooked? Is that safe for me to continue cooking with that? Well, that's not an essential item.
Right?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So like, well, who wins on that? Well, you can still order it. What's like, yeah, but I don't want to support big business. Like, and now they're talking about, let's section off entire, it's not fair that Walmart and Costco get to sell everything while small businesses under. Their solution isn't open everything up. Their solution is no. Let's section off the entire sections of Walmart and Costco and make it so that you can't sell anything that wouldn't be, or that would be sold in small businesses. That's only fair. And then let's give 100% wage subsidy and 100% rent subsidy to the businesses. And it's like, man, like, why don't you just call it communism? Like, because that's literally what you're advocating at this point, is just pay for the businesses to do nothing, keep big box stores open, only a select amount of stuff, and then they're going to pick and choose what they decide is essential. Now, you covered a story from one of our followers, the Twitter thread, and she had an elderly dog that needed boots for the winter because it hurts her feet. And this is one of those items you go, that's not essential, maybe on paper, but it's essential to that dog. And it's essential to the owner who wants to take care of her dog. And on this list, you don't get to decide what's essential to someone else. Like I said, what if you're cooking and, your Teflon's coming off inside the food? Like, that's not healthy. You need more. Oh, you can order it on Amazon. Like, this is what we're advocating. Why in anyone's mind is it okay to continue to shut down businesses on, we went over the PCR testing, all the fallacies in there. And what I've said is that if we're going to do this right, and I'm working on that template, everyone, sorry. But if we're going to do this right, you need to test asymptomatic people. If you test them and they test positive, then you need to send it off for culture. And another thing I found out, we'll talk about Thursday night because it's going to be too much for tonight, is that the viral load seems to be highest, according to the medical studies I've looked at, when you're in hospital or when you're like at the end's wit, if you're going to die from it. So basically you have more severe symptoms if you have a high viral load. Well, in that case, it should definitely be culturable. You should be able to infect another cell line. And so we should be doing this with all asymptomatic cases. And I'm not advocating mandatory testing or anything like that. I'm saying if somebody goes and voluntarily tests and gets a positive asymptomatically, involuntarily, I need to emphasize that, because I don't agree with, hey, John at my work tested positive, now everyone has to test or has to test. That shouldn't be how this works. But if you, for some reason, tested positive with asymptomatic, they should have to send that off to a lab and prove that you're actually infectious. And they should have to get that result back within a day or two, and you shouldn't be stopped from doing that. Now, I think what would happen is, like I said, in Wuhan, you had 10 million people roughly tested, 300 asymptomatic, and then 0 were actually infectious. So I imagine, like, you would say as a precaution, you would do this in the short term, but eventually it's probably going to be, listen, you're not infecting anyone. It might be like 1 in 1 million, but you don't focus on the 1 in 1 million when you're focusing on the majority of a problem. So it's kind of mute point. There's really no point in testing asymptomatically. But to hospitalized cases and people that are truly symptomatic, they should all have to be set off to prove they're infectious. Now, we did this at the beginning of the pandemic, and they stopped doing it. Everything used to go to the National Microbiology Lab, where they would have to try to inject another cell line or cell culture and prove that it was actually infectious. We no longer do this. So on top of that, I'm going to lay out some common fallacies on the Swedish model here in a minute, where we're not... Everybody likes to crap on Sweden, and I'll give you my thoughts on that after I show you the data. But I believe when you see that nations that have locked down and taken draconian measures are taking the very, very hard route for approach, and you see them not faring better than Sweden, that should be enough to tell you that lockdowns don't work. Now, the excuses constantly get made, but the reality isn't, and this is the truth of the matter, is that this whole who's doing better, who's doing worse thing is a very nuanced discussion. It's like, what's your bed capacity? What's your healthcare like? What's your density of your cities like? Canada has a low amount of cases per million people compared to other countries, but look at our demographics. Like, we should have knocked it out of the park from the very beginning. And when you look at Ontario as an example, we have most of our cases coming from Toronto and Peel region. Well, why is that? Well, that's what you would expect, because that's your high demographic areas. Where's the least amount of cases? It's your northern rural communities. And same thing in Quebec. Where's most of the cases? It's coming from the urban centers again. But it's a hard, we need to have a hard conversation about what the facts actually look like. So without further ado, I'm going to show it, and then we'll talk about it, Broderick. All right, so this is Statista, or I'll say Statista, like Batista. Statista.com. It's a subscription-based website if you want full access to all the studies, but they do publish a lot of stuff for free. And so we have deaths per million people here. And we'll go deaths per million total, so we can compare that. So leading the pack, I guess you would say, is Belgium for deaths per million. Peru, we know people in Peru, they've had severe lockdown, but limited access to hygienic stuff. A lot of people don't have running water, very dense urban cities. And so it's not exactly a surprise. Now we go to Italy, also had severe lockdowns, and it's continued to do more and more severe approaches. Now they're all above Sweden. Bosnia is also above. North Macedonia above. Slovenia, Spain, Moldova, United Kingdom, another one in the region nearby, has more deaths per million from COVID than Sweden. Also, the United States of America, Argentina, Czechia, I'm going to butcher it, Mexico, right? So all more. Czechia,
because it's just Czech, the Czech people.
Brutal. All right, so France also did lockdowns. Brazil didn't, right? So like everybody wanted the crap on the Brazilian president, but I mean France, UK, USA, more deaths per million, and they have they don't have as strong of a healthcare system as a France, as a UK, I mean that's pretty obvious to most people that kind of know the issues here. Bulgaria, Armenia, Chile, Panama, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia, then we hit Sweden, right? So the point on this is we have all these countries that had a drastic approach. Life is pretty much unchanged in Sweden. They have the ability, okay, can you pull up our faces so we're at half? So we have the ability to, or they have the ability to go on about their life. They haven't mandated masks. They basically said, listen, if you're sick, stay home. And and they just basically said, be extra cautious. Like if you have the sniffles, if you have the cold, just stay home if possible. Now listen, we've said this too. Like if they would have from the very beginning said, listen, just be extra cautious and we're going to do top-ups. You won't lose any pay if you have to actually, stay home, but we're going to make you go get a point of care assessment from a physician or a practitioner to prove you're actually kind of got some symptoms or something. That would be maybe a better way to do it, because I imagine too many people would take advantage of it. That would be the concern. But at the end of the day is how many billions of dollars? I mean, they spent more than the world wars at a federal level combating this thing. And I imagine most of it, or a lot of it, has been wasted and not gone where it needs to go. But I say all this to say, Sweden is doing better on deaths per million than Brazil, than France, Bulgaria, Chile, United States of America. We'll go back here. Italy, Peru, Spain, Moldova, the United Kingdom, Argentina. Like, okay, so that's just deaths. And
where does Canada rank?
Yeah, actually, sorry, that is one thing I meant to pull up. So Canada is 364 per million. But Iran's doing better than us. Or sorry, not Iran. But places doing better than us include Iraq, Ukraine, Albania, Greece, Serbia, Jordan, Israel, Russia, Honduras, Oman, Germany. Now, for considering how spaced out we are, we should be doing a lot better. And there's another stat I'm going to bring up here in a second. But we'll go into the cases now. Cases is the other one people drive on all the time. And the United States has by far a lot more cases, but when you realize that the United States has tested 235 million times, roughly, it kind of makes sense when you know what we know about the PCR test, that you're going to see that. So we have Canada, Mexico down here, right? But this is cumulative confirmed cases as of December 27th. Okay, so Sweden's doing better per million people than Spain, France, and the United States, who have all done lockdowns. Where's this in the media? Right? And that's on cases. That's what they love to talk about. Right? And so all we hear is that Sweden's not doing well. Sweden's not doing well. Sweden's not doing well. Well, and what I argue in my article here today, and I recommend you share this one out, what I argue in it, what's life really like in no lockdown Sweden, is that of course they're going to argue these things, because how would it look if they said, hey, guess what? We locked you down. We did all these draconian measures. We've taken your freedoms. We have decimated the economy. Your quality of life is going to diminish over the next decade, 2 decades because of what we've done. Your healthcare system is going to actually crumble. This is the ironic part of all this. Like, people are applauding it. Like, yeah, I got to lock down. Woo! We're going to stop it. And it's like, okay, even if that were true, the result of the lockdown, and I'm saying if it were true, not that it's true. If you're going to lock down, we're going to have to pay this, and we can't pay it without raising the taxes. And when you've diminished or you've lost all these jobs, the taxable income is going to go down, which means that service cuts are coming. The taxes are going to go up. Somebody's got to pay the interest, and your healthcare is going to diminish over the next decade. Your services, like I call question to it, like what about water? What about our roads? What about our police and our fire? Those things are all likely to diminish in quality because of the lockdowns today. And that's presuming they worked. They don't. As we see, Sweden's outperforming the United States, France, United Kingdom in cases per million and deaths per million. And those countries, the United Kingdom is most interesting to me because it's similar areas, similar demographic. Not similar demographic, but similar area. And people are quick to go, well, Sweden's economy is doing poorly too. And this is something else I point out in the article. Well, of course, their economy is done poor this year. It's an export-rich nation, and everybody around the world has shut down. So what did you think was going to happen? But one thing's for sure, they will rebound a lot quicker, and they will be much better positioned to come back from this than many other nations. And they don't have, they're not going to have these same problems that every other nation who's decided to lock down will go into. Violence will go up too. Yes, so we know that with every 1% uptick in unemployment, there's an uptick in suicides, uptick in violent crime, uptick in drug overdoses. And those things aren't going to be known for years to come, how bad and how severe they were this year and next year, how they'll be. And so these are all things we need to talk about. But Sweden outperformed deaths per million and outperformed cases per million. France, United Kingdom, United States, all did draconian lockdowns, all have taken and assaulted, in my opinion, freedoms and the liberty of the people in order to combat COVID. And the conversation I actually, when this all started, I think I told you about this. I did a quick radio show interview, and then the guy was never on the air again after. I don't know if it had anything to do with my call, or they didn't like the fact he was actually having open discussion and dialogue about what was going on. Basically said, what's your thoughts on the pandemic, and do you think lockdown is the right approach, or do you think, to prevent healthcare from being overrun? And when I called in, I basically said, listen, they're not mutually exclusive. If we shut down and you hurt the economy, you're going to hurt healthcare eventually, and you can't not have these conversations in unison together. Now we're on the second one here, and nobody's talking about in the mainstream media what is going to happen 2, 5, 10, 20 years from now as a result of what we're doing today. There's going to be less jobs. If there's less jobs and there's the same amount of people competing for them, that means what? Less money, which means what? Less quality of life, less, right? So, and then less taxable income will be as a result of the job losses. Well, and taxes got to go up to pay for this. So less income, higher taxes, which just guarantees more dependence on government. Who's going to pay? How are we going to pay it? What's going on? And that's where you hear your prime minister come out and go, this is a great opportunity for a reset, only to turn around the next day and say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And then you see what they're doing, and it's like, well, this doesn't make sense if you're thinking long term. The only benefit Trudeau has is that, nothing he seems to do makes any sense short term or long term. So he can play it off probably easier than other leaders can. But this is happening worldwide. We have leaders coming in and saying, listen, this is a great opportunity for a reset. Well, I'll lay out a counter perspective here. Fiat money was running the gambit. We were coming to the end of, a bubble, and I think this was an opportunity to pop it. So what are the kids, Linda, we'll look at what your kids will be left with. Exactly. So how's this all going to be paid for? Like, who's going to pay for it? And if we lock down today, you're hurting yourself tomorrow. And everybody's saying we can't overwhelm healthcare, and healthcare is so important. Nurses are awesome. Yes, they are awesome. But at the end of the day, economics needs to be understood by the general populace, and the leadership and the media should be hammering this point home too. We can't shut down forever. And I don't understand how Canadians and people that I thought were intelligent and rational have all of a sudden, when this happened, thought, yeah, we can shut down again, when we can just flip back on the economy whenever we feel like it. I don't get that. And then when you look at the data and you see Sweden doing better deaths per million and cases per million than the United Kingdom, USA, France, those nations did lock down and they have had draconian approaches, then you're scratching your head and you're like, well, then what are we doing? Because this is just going to diminish our quality of life for sure. So I'm going to ask you a question here and put you on the spot, Broderick, but how do you feel like thinking about this in the long term? What do you think? Is that put stress on you? Like, you're 19 years old, right?
Yeah, no, 20.
20 now?
I forgot how old I was.
So you're 20 years old. You're coming into the workforce, and it doesn't look to be a pleasant future on the horizon. Like, what do you see, in your future? Does that give you pause to really want to plan and do things? Do you get anxious thinking about it, or you just try to avoid it altogether?
Well, to start, I don't usually always think about a lot of things in the future. I probably should think more about it, but I'm kind of I like to live in the moment. But I mean, number one, dating has been a hard thing during COVID. And I usually like to think back to myself as just being 20. I'm just 20. It's okay. I'm just 20. There's no rush, kind of thing. But I sometimes you look at other people, right, and you see they kind of got their stuff together. So I mean, I think there's a right time for everybody. But I think dating's become a lot harder when it comes to COVID. And I mean, like my roommate found this really nice girl online. He really liked her, and then she sent him a message saying, "Oh, I'm not meeting up with anybody till COVID is over." And so he just unmatched her and went on with his day. So it was like, really? Like, you're not even, like, it's ridiculous.
My concern is especially among the younger crowd, and I know you're unique and your roommates are a little bit unique in that sense, but yeah. Sorry, Caitlin just commented. We already had our first kid at 20. That is right. So what concerns me, and I know your age, you're a little bit different than most kids your age, and same with some of your roommates, but how many young people seem to think that this is all okay, like it's a great thing, and they think this can go on forever. That concerns me more than almost any of this.
I didn't really answer your question, but continue.
Yeah. So the naivety that comes with it, do you experience that with some of the people you went to school with, that they think, like, they don't think about the economic side of the lockdowns at all? They just think, oh, we need to do it, it's the right thing to do, and they've kind of been conditioned into those responses?
I haven't really talked with a lot of them from school on this. I probably talked with maybe one or two from the journalism class I was in. But I think I'd assume maybe 80 to 90% of them would probably be more liberally stanced on that. So, yeah.
To also put it in perspective, that's the people coming into journalism, probably roughly 80 to 90% left-leaning, right?
I think other than me, maybe 3 or 4, or maybe 5 people in my program were more conservatively leaning.
Yeah, or they were afraid to say anything because they know the consequences of what.
I know there was 2 who spoke up a lot. I know there's maybe 1 or 2 others that were kind of like the silent majority or minority majority, whatever. But yeah, there's 2 I knew who spoke up all the time. And one was very, like, one wrote a nice piece on if you're pro-choice or not pro-choice, and the other one was very strong on transgenders in sports in one class, I remember.
Yeah, no, it was the same thing when I was in tech. You know, I was doing web design, and it was like a small class, but it's 70, 80% of people, again, would have been left-leaning and think that these type of approaches to these measures would have been a good thing. And we need to have a discussion on a national level, and with our politicians, they need to understand, like, they do understand, they must. I can't imagine you're not that naive and still able to get, no, some of them are, but en masse, I'm talking like 2/3 have to understand that this isn't a good thing long-term, which, why are they doing it? So, you know, on that topic, we're going to I'll put out the template. I'll make sure it's done tomorrow on the PCR, and having people who are asymptomatic and who are symptomatic actually have to have them sent off to a national microbiology lab or someplace able to do that kind of thing again. Because it's really unacceptable to turn people's lives upside down on a whim based on that. In addition, I think we'll put out another template talking about, you know, how Sweden's done better with no mask and no mandatory lockdowns, things like that, and just trusting their people than a lot of nations that are similar, that, you know, are developed nations like the United Kingdom, like the United States, like France. So it's an important discussion, and I can't believe that none of this has come up in the mainstream media. It's just cases. Hospitalizations, deaths need to shut down, and everybody's in agreement, which should be your first indicator that it's not, you know, it's not a discussion.
What was your beginning question again? It was like, how are you feeling with all of this COVID type?
How do you feel about the future?
I don't know if I want to have kids. I don't know if I want to have kids at this point. I don't know if, like, you want to bring kids into kind of a messed up world we're going into. And that's all filled with uncertainty and where actually we are headed. But, I mean, if you're really going to believe the conspiracy theories, which seem to be, quote-unquote, which seem to be more real and real every day, as much as maybe you don't want to believe them or whatever. This is coming from, I think of myself as a more liberal conservative sometimes, but I refused. Like, I think you could probably attest. I refused to believe a lot of these things you're trying to tell me for months and months and months, and we would have arguments on the phone. I just thought I didn't want to hear about it. But I think you get to a point where like I started, if I really listened to what you wanted to say, and then I started to it just made sense. So yeah, like I don't think I'd want to bring kids into this world, but I do. Your kids are amazing, so
I know.
that's something that
I get it from
love.
somewhere.
I mean, I love the idea of having kids. I'd love to have 2, and like I said, I'd like to have twins first go, but that's not probably possible because I am a twin, so it skipped a generation. But
yeah, no. TS talked about the cycle threshold. Carrie Mullis that invented the PCR. We have talked about that numerous times, but it's always worth mentioning. It was CEBM, run by the CDC, who ran approximately 90 tests, and they couldn't culture a single one that was a positive above 24 cycles. And so Nobel Prize winner Carrie Mullis had said, right, you're basically amplifying it so that you can make a lot of something out of something, and that it doesn't tell you if you were sick or that you were infectious or the thing that you had was ever going to hurt you from the beginning. So this is like, there's a twofold. The PCR isn't a great way to diagnose to begin with. It's very finicky, but if we're going to actually use it and that's what they want to use, then they need to drop it to like 24 cycles. And they won't do that. And the other thing I need to get ahead of, because as soon as enough people figure out this PCR stuff, they'll just flip it and they'll go to rapid testing, and then they'll sell that as, oh, it's a good thing. It's just as good. And meanwhile, my understanding of the rapid testing is it's still riddled with all the same issues, if not more. So I need to look into that. But it's, I would say, on the kid thing, you'd be missing out on a massive blessing, and you can't worry about the things you can't control. I can only focus on what I can control, and trust God to do the rest. Maybe you don't have that faith. I'm pretty unwavering in that. I think, God will make a way. And I don't know what that looks like today, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to cry. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be brought to my knees and that things aren't going to be astronomically hard. I just believe that, there's plans to prosper me and not hurt me. And that's ultimately what I believe. But we'll go back into the my husband makes me watch a lot of golf. He knows I'll sleep immediately.
Tim just came out and said his wife made him watch a movie.
Yeah, I've seen that. Well, good to have you, Tim. Well, I want to go into this study here. So this is the other thing we talked about. Sweet ass, where is it? FAQ. Here it is. Oh, did I have my screen share up? No. Sorry,
I guess that's my doomer side talking, but you're right. You're right.
I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed right now. I get overwhelmed, but man, you can't let the circumstances of life take away the joys too, right?
Yeah.
I refuse to let what's going on rob me of my joy today. And, everybody dies, not everybody lives, and I'm not going to let a government official or poor handling of what's going on and the hard times prevent me from the joys of having children, prevent me from the joys of spending time with my wife and kids. And you're missing so much of life if you let this overwhelm you like that. And you're not alone in that thought though, at all. And I had friends in high school that thought the exact same thing a decade ago. So,
I mean, I think during this first lockdown and this first year of this crap so far, first 9 months, I find that my mental health has dropped a bit, and I've never had mental health issues, and I don't really think I do that much anyways. But if I'm being honest, I think my mental health isn't where it was 9 months ago. And I was thinking today, I think I was thinking today is I don't know how well it's going to be if we have another year, which I know we will are. So I need to get out of that negative mindset and, you're right, kind of get more joys. Try to find the little things to be happy about in life.
Man,
some
I love
changes.
you. I care about you. And, you know, we keep fighting for the things we know are right, but you can't let this rob you of your today, man. You can't be so worried about tomorrow that you get robbed of today. With everything going on, it's so easy to fall into that, and I'm guilty of it too, where I've been overwhelmed and beat down by what's going on. And I think, you know, a lot of our audience could probably relate to that. But no, that's exactly what they want too, you know, because then you're easier to manipulate and control. And it's like, no, there's a lot of good stuff still happening. You know, even when things get tough, you can always find things to be thankful for. And you may not believe that, and you say things are so hard right now. And for a lot of people, they're a lot harder than what I'm going through or anybody else is going through. Like, things are still good. I still got hydro. I still got a roof over my head. I still got food in my belly. I still got food in the freezer and fridge. Like, a lot of people are hurting a lot more than that. And but even then, like, a story that comes to mind, you can look him up. Voice of the Martyrs, if you have Audible. The book is called Wormbrand, and he was imprisoned in Romania, I believe, when they came in, the Russians, and took over. He spoke against the communist narrative, and he wouldn't preach the official communist Bible, and spoke up at a national press conference of pastors, ticked off all the leadership, and he was walking down the street one day, and they threw him in. Two armed men threw him in a van, and he didn't see his family for a number of years and was tortured day in, day out. Him and his wife both ended up in imprisonment camps. And listening to that book, and if that man, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. If that man can find things to be thankful about in the midst of torture, then I could sure as hell find things to be thankful about today. So, you know, perspective can change a lot of things. And I think it's important when we feel sorry for ourselves and things are hard and we're beaten down by our circumstances, you know, to look outside of that and try to find ways to shake yourself out. There's always somebody, generally speaking, worse off. And service is a great way. Serving others is a great way to be woken up to that reality of other struggles. You know, you get firsthand experience seeing it will open your eyes and change it different. That's what the Peru trip did for me when I went down to Peru and did, you know, the medicine and all those things that we did. We did the medicine, the clothes, and the free dental clinic and things like that. And I told you the story that we had, like, the 5-year-old girl come in and she had gum rot and yeah, and that stuff will put it in a different perspective. You come home, you're not going to be the same after seeing something like that. So it's important. Like, we can get perspective in many ways. And one of them is listening to others' stories through books and novels and things like that. That can bring you right outside of and give you a different perspective on what you're going through today. So,
I mean, Bernard's saying 10% of the population had suicidal thoughts. I can't say I'm one of that 10%, but I can say my mental health has deteriorated a little bit. And where was I going to go with this? I'm just losing my track of thought now. I guess what I need to remind myself more now is, you know my upbringing, and I know I think I've made it this far not to give up now, if you want to say that. I guess I don't know. I haven't had suicidal thoughts, but I think if you make it this far with the shit I had to deal with growing up, I mean.
Well, I talked with one of your journalist students at Conestoga about mental health and growing up the way we did and some of the stuff we had to go through. And without going through too much detail, like, I went through 3 divorces. Yeah, it's published somewhere. I don't know how you'd find it anymore. But I went through.
Yeah.
Well,
I can find that right now if you want.
You can. I don't know that I want it out there. But I personally, I went through 3 divorces before the age of 17. Dad was barely ever around. Barely's around today. I'd be lucky to get a phone call once a month, and that usually I'm the one that initiates it. And I can remember frequently, like, getting yelled at, screamed at in my face. Your dad a few times grabbing me by the throat and pushing me up against the wall and lifting me up. And every one of our older brothers was out of the house before the age of 17. And man, like, all I can say is, like, when I look back on all those problems, they shaped me into who I am today, to where, you know, I'm actually thankful for a lot of that, you know, stuff that I just look at it as it gave me a different viewpoint, perspective on people. Like, I was able to forgive your dad, and in the last couple of years of his life, seeing him change and genuinely become remorseful about some of the stuff he'd done and want to change things. And it's all those things that factored in. It's like, yeah, we got a big journey ahead of us. That's all I'm gonna say. It doesn't matter what's coming, right?
Yeah. It's called Childhood Agonies.
So he did. It was 3 different people he did it with, right?
Yeah, you.
Or she did it.
Manuel de Vries and maybe I think the first one was an intro that she did research with, and then the last 2 were you and Emmanuel.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get back on track here. Got all sidetracked and emotional.
Get your Swedish study.
We just like to throw our viewers for a loop. You'll never know what you're gonna get. It's like Forrest Gump in a box of chocolates. Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Appreciate that, Tim. Linda, I see your comment there as well. I don't want to throw your name up. Maybe, you know, it's a sensitive comment, but basically, you know, all the abuse and stuff that went on, I'm a better father today because of that. I catch myself because of that, because of what I went through. And sometimes something will happen and my daughter will react a certain way, and it's because of how I grew up. And I go, well, she's feeling this. And I have a lot more empathy and sympathy than I ever would have had I not gone through it. So in that sense, yeah, I'm thankful. You can be thankful for bad things coming your way. But let's get back. You can open up a box and there's a bite taken out of each chocolate. Whose household do you live in, Jim? Who's doing this to you? I grew up knowing I never wanted to be like my supposed role models. Yeah, I can be there. It took me a lot longer to find out that some of the people I idolize were maybe not worth idolizing. So really appreciate the comments, and I hope this can be a community. I hope this can be a community where people can share regardless of how big we get. And I think, you know, I take pride in it and also put a lot of emphasis on what this community is like and treats each other like, because I think your audience, to a certain extent, not overall, you can't control everybody who's going to find your work interesting, but to a certain extent is a reflection of your integrity and character. So I hope, you know, that the audience stays supportive like this all the way throughout our growth. So back to it, back to the narrative. So I want to talk about, I talked about it in the article, but military report reveals that the sector is long known, Ontario's nursing homes are in trouble. System has been ignored and neglected for decades. No, I bring that up to bring this up. As COVID-19 cases surge, global study paints grim picture for elder care homes. And the reason why I think this is important is we are way ahead compared to other countries. So Sweden, right? They said, oh, it was really bad in their long-term care homes. 46% of their deaths have come from long-term care homes. Roughly 80% of ours had at, I believe this is October 17th, 16th. Now, to count that off, well, they've known about this problem for decades. And now, I've said this in past broadcasts, all of a sudden it's become your fault that the problem that is persistent in long-term care homes, the majority of our deaths, over 75% to this day, that's somehow your fault, even though you're not mixing with that population. And it's realistically, they've been ignored and neglected. Well, the military report came this out. The CAF report outlines instances in which members spotted equipment used on both infected and non-infected patients without being disinfected. Wonder why it's so bad in the retirement homes, as well as rotten food, cockroach infestations, and a startling disregard for basic cleanliness. It is scandalous. It is shameful. It is shocking, Mitchell said. Our senior generation is living in that, and that is national atrocity. Yep. And I call it the one and done cycle. They hit on it for a couple of days, but where the hell is this coming back up, in the sense that 80% roughly of our deaths from COVID have been in long-term care facilities. And then you find out this is going on right now. It hasn't stopped. It's still going on. They gave some more money. That was Ford's solution. And there's been no update as to improvements. But we do know that stats say the majority of the problems are still coming out of long-term care homes and retirement facilities. So we're back at square one. For weeks, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been saying the province's long-term care system is broken. And on Tuesday, he said that he saw firsthand limitations of the system when his brother, former Mayor Rob Ford, was in palliative care before his death in 2016. They should have alerted him on a personal basis what was happening in these homes. He should not be surprised, she said, and refers to Mitchell on the Premier. Since the weeks of the pandemic, Ford has been advocating for a need to put an iron ring around Ontario's long-term care. Yeah, how's that working? Sorry, not to be so negative, but stats don't lie. As of Tuesday, the Ministry of Long-Term Care was reporting 1,538 deaths linked to COVID-19, while the Public Health Ontario epidemiologic summary listed 4,892 cases among residents. This is old ones is from May 27th. So this is way back when. Obviously, those numbers are drastically different now. But system neglected and ignored for decades. Fullerton said it was the novel coronavirus that pushed some of the province's long-term care homes to the brink. While 20 to 30 years of reports said that might not be the case, they were already at the brink. This is something that everyone has known about for years. Our population is aging. Long-term care was ignored. Long-term care was neglected. We were shining a light on this. We were looking at it, fixing a system that has been neglected and ignored for decades, and then COVID. Yeah. And then tipped the homes that were having difficulty staffing already right over the edge. Okay, well, you're talking about staffing, that doesn't address the cleanliness. But anyway, they'll chalk that up to staffing issues as well. Yes, inspections happen and these folks come in here, but it took the military to be there 24/7, the Premier said, adding that it's impossible to know the extent of the problems plaguing the system until you live, breathe, eat it, and you're there around the clock at nighttime and during the day.
CBC investigative piece there is, I don't like CBC, but I found it very informative. They dug into it.
They're hit and miss. Like one time out of 100, they might hit.
I like the majority of their investigative pieces, but not all of them.
Well, it depends on what they focus on, right? Like there's different ways to drive a narrative, and sometimes it's what you talk about and what you don't talk about too, not just the quality of the work or how informative it was. So the sector needs immediate attention. Government must act now to halt these outbreaks. We have been working through the difficult conditions for years. This is not the one I thought it was, but basically, I got to find that military report. Maybe we'll read that Thursday night, but it doesn't paint a pretty picture at all. Finding people laying in urine and crap and just not being able to move. And then we've seen videos come out elsewhere, people being neglected in long-term care homes really around the world. But, Canada is way out in front for a reason, unfortunately, in long-term care facility deaths, 80% compared to the next leading country being roughly, what was it? Spain at 63, we're at 80. This was October 16th, I believe. 61% Belgium, and then Sweden. Everybody likes to point the finger at Sweden being bad, but 46%, we're at 80. So interest worth noting. And yes, pretty much there. Oh, no. Did I do this one? No, we already did the deaths globally, right? Okay. So there's my mandatory mask article. That's a good one you need to look into on what your rights are around the mandatory mask. Talk about the bylaws. It also gives the link to report people that aren't honoring it. I know that's becoming more of an issue, and I bring it up again because I know it's going to become more of an issue with the second lockdown, because you're going to get a lot more Karens and Kens that are going to be more adamant about, they think it's helpful, so therefore they're going to push that even more, and you're going to have people not listening to the bylaw at all. But again, we talked about the Ontario Nursing Association 2018 winning in court. There was a precedent set, not talked about anymore. Sweden. Oh, that was one thing I wanted to talk about. Did I bring it up in my article? I did on mask. I don't have it up. My bad. Bigger questions. No face mask. This is what they had to say on the face mask. So why are countries, this was the question they posed. Why are countries acting differently over face masks? The scientific evidence around the effectiveness of face masks in combating the spread of infection is weak, which is why different countries have arrived at different recommendations. Some countries have chosen to view face masks as a form of security and hope that universal use of face masks will reduce the risk of infection spreading from people who are in the incubation period before the symptoms are apparent or who have such mild or unspecific symptoms that they do not consider themselves ill. The Public Health Agency of Sweden does not recommend the general use of face masks, quote, because as a face mask that itches or slips down below the nose may mean a person is regularly touching their mouth, eyes, nose, or with their hands, which can increase the risk of infection. Now, I've talked about this before, but aerosol leakage around the mask can lead to those, high touch areas like the side of your face, top of your face, bridge of your nose, your neck, and then you're touching other things. And this could, if you're symptomatic. And another thing, the use of a face mask, they say, may also encourage people with mild symptoms to go out into the community, which might increase the spread of infection. And I've said that before as well. Like, I don't know, you're at Walmart all the time, so I'll finish here and I'll pose the question. But people constantly fooling around with masks, putting on soiled masks. And in addition, we've watched the numbers rise since the mask mandate. We've covered articles on that where we went over the data as well and put it all in the charts. I think it was called the real COVID-19 data. That was the one you put together. Looking at my wife here. She don't know. We've done a lot of COVID stuff. But, people coming in ill. Have you seen it at work in any way, shape, or form? Not the rat out employees, but like minor symptoms, things like that. I think you're covering up it's a lot easier to cover your symptoms if you're wearing a face mask. Like if you had minor symptoms and presuming that those are the people
on your face.
Yeah. And obviously symptomatic people are the people that drive infections, especially when we 10 million tested, 300 asymptomatic, none of them were actually infectious. So it's pretty safe to say almost, well, I'll say almost because there could be like 1 out of 1 million, right? Almost no chance asymptomatic people are spreading. So symptomatic people coming in to shop and to work, wearing the mask, they have an easier time actually hiding those symptoms. So now to you at Walmart, Survey says, what have you seen?
I've seen one of my coworkers, will heard her cough upstairs for, I don't know, I think she's a smoker. But regardless, it was like one of those really deep, heavy coughs. And it was persistent for like a good, I'm going to say like a minute or two. She was just coughing. I think it sounded like a smoker cough. She was basically coughing up a lung, and you wonder, no one batted an eye exactly. They might have been thinking what I was thinking. I was like, I don't know. I don't have any fear COVID, but like it's kind of still in the back of your head sometimes.
Well, it's been so conditioned that even though you know all the other stuff, you'd have to put it in context. There's a new thing, mask called acne. Actually, not new. We've covered that a while back, a couple months ago.
Ooh, I had a clip on that.
Masking is the term they've used to dub it. People wearing the mask all the time because of the bacteria increase on your face from the sweat and different things holding on your face. Same with the face shield. So if you have a face shield on, you constantly have something here. What's up, Joshua? You have a face shield on, you have something always here. You're going to have more bacteria on your face, which will lead to breakouts or maskne. So I'm afraid to sneeze in public. That's my wife. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else has dealt with this. We'll throw it in the comment section. Who here is afraid to actually show any symptoms of like normality in the winter? Like your nose is running and you're like, I got to breathe through both nostrils. Got to make sure no coughing, no sniffles, no nothing. I love sneezing in public, Tim. I like seeing the fear in their eyes. So it's honestly, it's funny. So there's maskne, and then there's another one called mask mouth. That's where I was going with this. Mask mouth. Have you heard of this? Also, they came up with the term mask mouth. We should revisit these. I'll bring them up again in the next live stream. I got the videos clipped, right?
I discovered one thing about mask mouth, what you're talking about. I think it's because I do have I do wear a mask at work because I have to in terms and conditions of my job, basically is what I call it. And I found I was one week I was wearing those surgical masks, but it was a different surgical mask than the ones they usually give you. And I found that you get the driest mouth with that type of mask. And that was one of the things that you said caused mask mouth, right?
Yeah. So basically, because you're forcing air, so mask mouth was dubbed mask mouth from the term meth mouth, and it's because you're trying to force air through your mouth or through the mask, which causes it to dry out, which creates a bacteria-ridden area for it to thrive on. And there's a woman we'll show it Thursday night. I got to pull it up. But basically she's like, my breath's bad. It's like, yeah, because she takes the tongue scraper. And then the irony of it, and it was like a mainstream media piece out of America, ABC or something like that. I can't remember. We'll show it Thursday night live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for everyone.
Are we still going at 8:30 because it's New Year's Eve?
We're still going at 8:30.
Okay.
And I'll staying up too late. I'm old. But basically, because you're forcing air through your mouth and it dries out, the bacteria becomes way worse, and it's causing people to just have rank breath. That's like the low end concern, but it's also like receding gum lines and gum rot and tooth decay as a result. So these are other things. Like, can we have a real conversation about the downsides of mandatory masking? And it's not the old lady or the soccer mom or the dad that is running out to grab a few groceries. It's not them who are wearing it for 15 minutes to an hour at a time that are going to have these issues. It's the factory worker that's in 8 to 12-hour shifts and wearing it constantly. It's the Walmart worker like yourself who's being forced to wear it throughout their full-time week. And
hospital workers that are working doubles and crap like that, right?
Well, and what's interesting is when the Ontario Nursing Association, I wish they would speak up about what's going on, because they won in 2015 and 2018 on the St. Michael's VOM vaccine or mask policy because, quote, it didn't protect the patient, didn't protect the wearer. There's insufficient evidence and unconvincing evidence is what the arbitrator said in that case. And all of a sudden this happens, and it's like, I've actually read medical studies where they said it's like a talisman. It's gives people a perceived sense of safety. And so it's like, maybe that's why they're staying quiet. But yeah, that's the only mask that's cheap enough that will work for a bit is the N95 with the breather valve. I've worn them many times. Yeah, the breather valve. Yeah, but you're not protecting anyone else. Well, wait a minute. If you're actually protecting you to a certain extent, then you don't get infected, then you can't spread it. Well, that's protecting other people, isn't it? But you might have it asymptomatically. No, because 10 million people, 300 asymptomatic, 0 infectious. And, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove of the WHO, they said less than 2 to 5%. Who says the talisman quote? Yes, World Health Organization. See, I knew.
They banned the valve at drive test centers. You need to make you wear it for your driving test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make any sense. They basically told you when you went in that you couldn't have
a scarf mask that goes around the
yeah,
mouth.
even though it's acceptable everywhere else, and there's no proof that anything does. What was that?
What they did to my sister.
What, force
She
her?
had to sit in the car for 20 minutes with her windows down, air out the nose.
So apparently your sister went to the drive test center, my wife, and had to sit in the car with the windows all down for 20 minutes to, quote, air out the COVID, just in case. Why are the homeless not dropping like flies? Yeah, no. Why is Peru doing better than better than most countries that have done or a lot of countries that have locked down? It doesn't make sense. There's there needs to be more studies into ivermectin, hydrochloroquine. And what I've said to people on the vaccine thing is why, so I talked to a resident doctor studying to be a doctor in Peru. And I just said, wouldn't it make sense to run the test as fast as possible on the drug side of things to work as a prophylactic and things like that than it would to go, we need a vaccine first? If you have drugs that seem to be working, wouldn't you check those out first? And that didn't seem to be a concern. What am I missing in the comment section here?
I think Tim is commenting on my sister.
Smoking a fatty in the car. It's a maybe. So I can't speak for her sister, but from I'll just leave it there. I'll get in trouble. Amazing that no cases of COVID in crowded Walmart, Costco, airlines, Amazon factory. Yeah, but churches and small restaurants are dangerous and clearly linked to more cases. Yeah, right. No, and then you can't, you see the pictures in an airline and it's like, okay, that's okay, but this isn't. And on that topic, in New York, there was a gym owner on our Facebook page you can check out. He was fined $15,000 for opening his gym with no restrictions, and he won in court because they deemed the limits basically arbitrary and capricious, is what they said. So on that topic, I mean, there needs everybody. I'll put this out there again. Everybody's looking for one lawyer or a couple people to do the court cases and stuff. That's not the way to go about this. I don't think. I think the way to go about it is if find a way to crowdfund a lawyer for $3 to $5 grand, 10 grand max, and just every single case hammer out the individuals and start setting those precedents in every place and opportunity you can. So you got okay. I'm more worried about a vaccine and short-term and long-term effects. Yeah. So on the vaccine, we covered from the British Medical Journal, Peter Doshi, the associate editor of the British Medical Journal, talked about it in one of our articles, the flaws of the COVID vaccine trials. It's on our website, divergemedia.ca. I'm paraphrasing the title probably because I can't remember. We've written over 100 articles at this point. 1 in 256 people will actually benefit from the vaccine, and the benefit they're seeking in their primary and secondary endpoints is simply a reduction in symptoms. It's not to see if it reduces transmission or prevents it. It's not to see if it stops prevents hospitalizations in ICUs. Basically, they presume if they can reduce symptoms slightly, then it should reduce severe symptoms. But there's no proof of that. It's a presumption. And that's not my words. That's the words of Peter Doshi, associate editor of the British Medical Journal. We cover in our article the COVID vaccine trials are very flawed, and that should concern everyone. I think that's the full title. Vaccine will give a new meaning to COVID-related. We'll see. I can only speak to what I know, and from what I've been studying with this, like the RNA vaccines have been around for 5 years that they've been testing from 2015. I believe they started with a rabies vaccine, and I'm probably not right on this, but I have been looking into it. And basically the trials, to my knowledge, there's no working RNA vaccine in circulation, and that's probably for a reason because they haven't passed the peer-reviewed trial. And so now we're just going with, it's like the equivalent of like Pfizer and Moderna comes out and they say it's 90% effective. It's great, guys. It's this, it's that. And it hasn't gone through peer-reviewed studies. It's kind of like a door-to-door salesman coming to your house with a knife. And he's like, 10 out of 10 of our guys say this is great. You should trust us. And it's like the same thing. They go, 10 out of 10 of our scientists say our vaccine's great. Trust us. It's like, yeah, I think you should let it go to peer review. Oh, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. Too many people will die. And I just go, But you also have ivermectin and hydrochloroquine that could be effective means, and you're putting no studies into those to see if they can prevent it, and it's already done, available, and effective and proven in other ways. So much safer in the sense that it's already on the market. We don't have any interest in looking into that. There's a bunch of red flags there. Reading the comments just going, why curfews? At 9:59 you're safe, but at 10:01 better watch out. Now, I will address this, Ivan's son. The reason, I'm not saying I agree with it, but what they'll tell you is that because of the curfew, we're limiting the amount of people that are out that will be intermingling for prolonged periods of time. Therefore, it's a maybe again. We think it may reduce transmission. Therefore, we're going to do it. And these things need to be questioned because, again, if you're healthy, and I mean genuinely healthy, right?
I think that curfew...
You're not getting people sick. That's what it shows. Sorry, on curfew.
I think that curfew is generally meant to curb young people from even having a social life. Because, I mean, I think you remember a while ago we went for my birthday when I did turn 19 out to one of the bars in Waterloo, and people who friends of ours from work who came with us didn't show up till like what was it 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock or something like that. So most young people don't go out till much later, which would be the reason why they'd have a later curfew or an early curfew like that, because most people will go out.
It was like, how does it make sense though? Again, not the driver of cases, young people, like they're not driving the predominant amount of cases, and they're least at risk of death or severe adverse reactions from. So why does it make sense to lock them down? And it was the same thing in the military when they told us to stand down in the reserve unit. It's like, I signed up to potentially die for my country, and you're telling me I have to go home to keep the military safe. It's like, and I'm least at risk. My age bracket is least at, like, it might have made sense at the very beginning. You're taking precautions. You don't know what you're dealing with. But now, like, I don't get it. You're talking like one of the healthiest populations. It's the same thing with young people.
I think they've been blaming it on young people for the uptick in cases, like of the new cases that have come up, not overall. I think what you're saying is overall they haven't been the main cause, but I think was it that young people are the largest increase or the cause of the newest increase of cases or whatever.
Yeah, but what's an increase? So this is another thing that needs to happen in the narrative, in the mainstream narrative. This is why I'm going to do that template up. It's like, okay, but how are they testing positive? Is it like Jody went out and then she got the sniffles and went to work and they told her she needed to get tested. They ran it at 40 cycles. She tested positive. They never sent it off to prove she was actually infectious. And then they said, well, Jody hung out with these 30 people, and if they don't get tested, they're all going to be presumed positive. And if they do get tested, there's a chance that you're going to have asymptomatic positives, even if they have no symptoms. So where's the increase really? You're not proving to me an increase until you go, hey, it's actually infectious. And the PCR is basically all it should be. All the PCR test should be is a marker to say potentially there's something here to be worried about. But when somebody's showing no symptoms, they're very unlikely to be able to, or not very unlikely. Again, Wuhan study, 10 million people, 300 asymptomatic, 0 positives. And then we had Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove said the same thing, very unlikely. And we don't focus on the minority of a problem. You don't focus on 5% of a problem to solve 95%. Can we agree on that? That's what they're talking about doing. Even if you presume the asymptomatic thing makes sense, which it doesn't based on the medical studies that are coming out. And all I'm saying is if you can't culture anything above 24 cycles, then you run 24 cycles. And that's probably the highest or the lowest they can go and actually still culture. And that doesn't actually address, well, how much were they able to culture? Were they able to culture 100% of those at 24 that were positives? Or was it 1%? Or 10% or 20, like you don't even know that. So you need, like, the only thing the PCR test should be used for as a marker to maybe say there might be something of concern here. But if you're not showing symptoms, they should allow you to go on about your life until they send it off to a lab. And with all the money, like, you're going to say, this is why they shut down doing this at the beginning with the National Microbiology Lab, actually testing to see that these things were actually infectious, injecting them into a cell culture, and proving that they could infect somebody else. They shut it down because they said it was a logistical issue. Well, how many billions of dollars does it take to solve the logistical issue? You couldn't figure it out. And then on top of that, I see lots of the comments. Listen, on the flu thing, yeah, it's just the flu. I don't think it's beneficial to even have that conversation at this point with the general public. I do know we've shown in our Facebook page the FDA documents that show it hasn't been properly isolated using known scientific method. There's a guy named Peter Borger. I've quoted in another article, I believe, How to Fake a Pandemic. We talked about his thoughts. It's like, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, and the genetic sequence of this virus looks almost identical to SARS. So he said, I think it's just a mutation of SARS. So all these things, and it can pick up other viruses. That's according to the FDA doc. Again, it's somewhere on our Facebook page if you want to go digging. Maybe I'll dig that up again and post it again. But again, when I talk about these things, generally speaking, I don't bring that up because I'm not convincing anyone that has their mind made up. So I'll bring it up and people can look at it if they want to look at it. It hasn't been properly isolated, but it is. I just say this: it is a problem, especially for the older population, and we need to figure out how to deal with it and get on with life. It doesn't mean we, maybe there needs to be a heightened sense of awareness, but there's a lot of questions I have too. Like, you need to compare what is the flu death numbers in the above 70 category from 2010 to 2019, maybe, and then compare that number to do we even know that it's more virulent than the flu? I don't know. Now we have a little slight uptick at the beginning of this for excess death, but that was likely because of the mishandling of sending sick people into retirement homes. And then you read the military report talking about disinfecting things with the same thing, the same disinfectant wipes and stuff like that, rotten food, all sorts of things. It's like all these things come into question. But if we're gonna have a real conversation about this, you need to compare the virulence of the flu. This is what I'm going to want to do. It's one of the things I'm going to do is reach out to public health and see if I can get an answer. Unlikely, but I want to know from 2010 to 2019 what the average was for people above the age of 70 with a confirmed influenza test that died from influenza. And then I want to know if you took the average positivity rate from the influenza test that they ran. Now, it would likely be a lot higher than COVID, because with COVID, they're just testing everyone. With influenza, it would be somebody who's point of care assessment likely and has been showing symptoms, like actual real symptoms. But I would want to know if you took that number of the infectious rate and you did, hey, 300,000 tests per million, what would the numbers look like then for an average flu season? There's an article.
Well, if they don't want to give it to you over the phone or even by email, you can just freedom of information it. Just depends on how much money it costs them to.
I'll have to crowdfund some of this stuff because I can't, man.
That info, because like it costs $5 to just send out the request, and then they'll charge you more based on how much work it costs for them to. So you can just put the $5 on the line, and then you can request it, and then if you can't afford to pick it up, then you just say no.
It's like $50 or something for an FOI, I think.
No,
they all add up.
$5, but they can charge you any amount for the fees that it costs them in the in the facilities for workers to gather the resources and like the wages and all that shit, right?
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're not getting notifications, Glenn. But anyways, we're probably gonna wrap up here. I'm gonna take a few more questions. My wife's signaling to me. She keeps going, "Come on, let's go." In the background. So flu is not denoted as COVID. What do we got? There's masks. If masks work and lockdowns work and shutting down the economy works, why do we still have thousands getting it daily? Exactly. Right? If masks work, then we should be back. Oh no, it's the non-maskers and people not wearing it right. Like, man, I see less than like one out of every 20 trips I go to, I might see one other person not wearing a mask. So okay, I'm pretty sure that's not the driver of it. And asymptomatic transmission is proven to be not the driver of it, less than 5%, even if you believe Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove. But there's a new study from November 22nd, I believe. Wuhan, 10 million. We've gone over this. 300 asymptomatic, 0 actually infectious. So you're a Canadian soldier, correct? Not anymore. You cannot talk about politics and be in the military, so I got a release, and I was a reservist. I hadn't gone to boot camp. I don't want anybody misconstruing anything. So it's all out there now. I do have my fancy little certificate somewhere, and maybe I should hang it on the wall behind me. Average flu deaths from 2015 to 2019 are 312 deaths. Is that annually, Tim? And again, what are the average number of tests? Like, so you'd have to go. Oh, that's probably just Saskatchewan. Okay. You'd have to do flu and pneumonia. And then again, it's like, how many were they actually testing? Because I think it's like maybe 50,000 in a season compared to 330,000 per million with COVID. Average hospitalizations are 5,119. That's Saskatchewan. Yeah, so I mean, it'd be a good question. No, national. Okay. Yeah, no, but you'd have to know the number of tests being done. So there's some information we'll dig at, and we might have to crowdfund it for FOI. But if we can get our hands on it, then great. Any more questions before we wrap it up? I'll leave it open for a few minutes here. Took the numbers from Vital Stats. I'm going to have to look into that. Maybe you should direct message us, Tim. The repercussions of the lockdown are worse than letting COVID spread. Yeah, David, we talked about that. Talked about what's going to happen with taxes, what's going to happen with the quality of our healthcare, quality of everything going on. It's definitely missing some info. Seeing another maskless patriot makes my day. Hey, we'll bring up that Walmart story. Maybe we'll close out if I don't get some cool comments. But we were out in Walmart, and there was a little kid, maybe 5-6 years old, that came up to us, and he had his toy, and he was showing off. He told us on previous live streams, and he was all excited to see us. And his mother came up wearing a mask, and dad was wearing a mask. Kids weren't. And they apologized, said, I'm sorry, but I think he's just excited to see somebody without a mask. And so that led to a conversation. She ended up taking her mask down, and she said, thank you for doing this and giving my child some normalcy, or something to that extent. And it's affecting a lot of people. And if you're taking that chance and you're going out and you're dealing with the harassment and the looks and everything else, don't think it doesn't make a difference. I'm sure it does make a difference more than you can tell, especially when this is all you see. So, all right. I think we're good. Seems more logical that underlying conditions cause flu-like symptoms, and it makes more sense.
I wanted to.
Yesterday, a guy took his off after seeing me. I had that happen early on in the auto shop. Remember, the kids were playing with the older gentleman, and he took his mask off, and then the other guy took his mask off. And by the end of it, there was like 4 people sitting in the waiting room, and only the one guy had it on, and he had it pulled down below his nose. What was that?
And now they won't take your calls.
Yeah, and now they don't even take my calls at that shop. I don't know if it's related. And I worked there. I worked there before.
They still give me,
I don't know.
They still give me a discount.
They still give me a discount when they take my calls.
Yeah.
Anyways, I haven't said where that is, so we're good.
I wanted
We're
to
safe.
ask you something. The Milgram, was it the Milgram test?
Milgram experiment, yeah.
Was that not in a TV show like we watched one time? I don't know, like it was a game show where they had that set up in the game show. I swore there was like some sort of game show or something that we watched.
I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. It's a very famous study that's been garnered a lot of attention over the years. Obviously, so again, on that study, 65% of the people went through. We played it earlier until we got flagged for stream violation. 65% of people went all the way through to the end on that. And so, you check out our live stream. I highly recommend. We're starting to hone the craft, I feel like, on the live streams and keeping it really good on certain topics and narrowing down the points. But why people just follow orders, that live stream, check it out. We talk about in length the experiments and what they did. And the Milgram experiment is a good example. Like, why do people just follow orders even though they know something's morally wrong? And so you need to be aware of this in the sense of what's going on with COVID.
It's called the game of death.
All right. You gonna save it for next time. We're running late, man.
Yeah.
It's almost my bedtime. So, he's adamant he wants to bring it up. Okay, you better find it soon. All right, what do we got here? Great, Dave. You have a link. That's 6,893 deaths, flu Canada in 2019. The trivium is the best defense against deceit. Huh. Will you watch the sheep lineup for their vaccine? Will I go and record it if they have a lineup that they allow the media to show up to? Absolutely.
All I can find is the CNN link.
I would not be a good testing victim. I'm a rebel and don't like orders. I'm a squirmer. I jolt. I might throw a left hook all of a sudden. Stats Canada. That's where that came from for Dave. Well, we got 2 Davids. Okay, you're confusing me now. So you can't find it?
It's a French TV show. It's a documentary. It's an hour and 35. I think this was on Netflix. I swear we watched this on Netflix.
You can find the link. We'll put out a Facebook post
From
later. 2010. If it's any good, I'm going to have to watch it now. But anyways, we're going to wrap up here. End of our show. To wrap up, closing statement, as it were, on the Swedish model. Deaths per million, less than France, less than the United Kingdom, less than the United States, all locked down, all draconian measures, all taking away your freedom. Sweden didn't. No mandatory mask either. Did better and outperformed those countries in deaths per million. They also outperformed those countries in cases per million. So both those metrics, let's have a conversation about it. Let's have a conversation about the side effects of masks. Let's have a conversation that lockdowns lead to having to pay the piper, increase taxes, and will likely lead to decreased amount, not likely, less jobs, more people competing for them, lower wages. And in addition to that, we will likely see the deterioration of our healthcare and our public services as a result of not being able to have as much taxable income. So here we go. that's what we should expect in the future. My link didn't come up. I might hold them, Dave. I don't know. My wife have to.
Yeah, I sent a link earlier too, and it held it.
Probably holds it
This
for
matter,
approval.
Put it up.
She says she can't figure it out. Well, that's a good place to end it. Greg Stilly from Diverge Media. We live stream Mondays and Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. Thanks for tuning in. Donna, Dave and David, Linda, Jaswal, good to see you again. Ivan's son. Really appreciate the new people coming out. This is what we do. We try to hammer on topics that aren't being covered in the mainstream media, stories that matter. Truth falls where it falls. That's what Diverge Media is about. I'm glad you're getting on board. We're going to keep building. This is going to keep moving forward. And as we do, I'm sure we're going to garner a lot of negative attention. And the smear attacks I can feel are on the way as we continue to grow.
Follow us on D-Live.
Follow us on D-Live. That's another plug.
And if you want
D-Live, Diverge Media. Thank you to Tim for following us recently. I've seen that. And everyone, good night from Diverge Media. We'll see you Thursday night, New Year's Eve, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And
I'm gonna plug the hats. If you want to, new hat. We got 8 left. We do want to sell these. And we want
$30, no tax, $10 shipping in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo. I will drive it to you. We can do a meet and greet. And anything within 2.5 hours, I'll drive it out to you to save the shipping. We'll keep it at $10 for that, up to 2 hours. That's the Toronto area. Outside of that, we can range shipping anywhere from Canada Post. Just send us your information. We'll print a shipping label, and we'll keep in touch with you. And we're working on integrating it into the website, but it costs money, costs time, and costs expertise that I do not have. So it's coming. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, very nice. They're stitched. Yeah. Diverge Media, Greg Staley signing off. See you New Year's Eve at 8:30 p.m. Thank you.
Bye-bye.